back to the Palmcast. In this episode, we're discussing strategies and tactics for maximizing the return on your investment in paid search ads. Yes, and also improving that return on your ad spend. You know, we love these acronyms in all industries, ROAS and, of course, ROI. We're joined again by the founder and CEO of Premier Online Marketing out of Austin, Texas, Mike Shaug. Yep, he's our expert, and you'll be educated once again by his insights, tips, and real-world examples, which will definitely help you and your business optimize your paid search campaigns effectively. So, without further ado, Mike, how are you, by the way? How are things?
Doing great. It's a beautiful 100-degree day in Austin, Texas. Can't complain.
Yeah, boy, I'll tell you, the storms have been rolling through Texas here the last couple of weeks, right?
Indeed, they have.
Yeah. Well, speaking of stormy weather, there are a lot of dealers out there, and for those joining the episode, either listening and or watching, we're really going to talk and try to contextualize this episode today a lot around the automotive industry and for dealers. And 2024, and really it started probably in 2023, there's a lot of stormy weather for dealers as they try to get their arms back around the marketplace being much more competitive. So I'm excited to get into the questions today. And I really want to start, I like to start most of these episodes with you, which to you and I probably feel a little bit elementary. Sometimes we fly right past things like, does a dealer even know what ROAS stands for? And a lot don't. So I just want to start there. Could you explain what return on ad spend actually is and why it's really important for being able to evaluate your ad performance?
Absolutely. Yeah. So return on ad spend, ROAS, or a lot of people say ROI, but essentially it's your profit margin that you make above the cost of your advertising. So if you have a cost per lead that is too high, you will have a lower return on ad spend because the amount of money that you needed to spend to go get that traffic, to get that lead and get that sale, ultimately, it kind of cut into the margin. So obviously you want to have as good of an ROAS as possible so you can have the highest margin health possible. But yeah, that's return on ad spend. You want to make sure that you're not running a negative profitability campaign. We see that all the time where there will be a lot of traffic or, clicks associated with the channel, but there won't be a lot of leads, or the cost per lead will be so high that when you end up doing the math on a campaign that has a cost per lead of $100 or more, you're like, okay, well, it takes 20 leads to sell this bike or this car, and the margin on that car or motorcycle is $2,000 or less, or in that ballpark. So you can easily, very, very easily spend too much money on traffic or spend it in the wrong places and have a negative ROI campaign, meaning that you're actually spending money for every car that you sell. So that's a pretty crazy concept. If you could think about bad marketing management, like if you were the finance manager of a dealership and you're writing a $500 check and giving it to the buyer of every car that you sold because that's how much money you use. But sometimes it can be very hard to evaluate it. It's hard to kind of really pinpoint where the waste is. So that's kind of a huge part of the work that I've been doing and the work that we do here at Premier.
Yeah, that all of that's so critical. And I don't think a lot of dealers, and I'm going to back up and not just say that this episode is really valuable for car dealers, and it also for power sports. If you're a dealer selling motorcycles, ATVs, side by sides, power, what am I thinking of is a personal watercraft. These are also really important concepts for power sports dealers. And so, you're just sharing some things that I don't think I've ever actually heard a dealer themselves articulate, how you could be in kind of this negative equity around you're actually spending more to acquire these opportunities or to actually sell the units. And without knowing that, boy, you end up in a real ugly place when it comes down to looking at your P&L statement.
Absolutely. And kind of one other thing on that, it's not like it's business as usual right now, where it's May 2024. The American consumer is about as squeezed as they have been. Consumer debt is at all-time highs. financing is all-time high. So if there were a time where your buyer might just sit it out and try to keep the clunker running for one more year or whatever, now is that time. So you have people that are going to be doing a lot more window shopping, less buying, and that increases the costs for everybody. I think one other thing to note on ROI for your marketing is that it really should be what leads your decisions around where you allocate your resources, your spend, your keywords that you bid on, specifically where you target, where you don't target, so you can run your ads for maximum profitability.
Yeah, those are really, really great tips. I'm guessing that the the beginning of all this, like just setting up campaigns, is so critical. Like, what would the key components of making sure that these campaigns for search are set up correctly, I guess, to give yourselves the best chance for success so that you don't run into some of these kind of positions of negative equity, or just kind of setting yourself up to pour gas on the fire and burn through budget when you don't need to be?
Absolutely.
Can you share some of those things, like just successful, I guess, initial setup strategies?
Yeah, starting out correctly is literally so important. And what the biggest issue that I see with all digital marketing campaigns is the agency that we're typically competing against applying their template and best judgment, which is kind of external from what the customer has. They try to impress the customer and show them, hey, we're targeting, the standard 20-mile radius around the dealership, or if it's a rural area, maybe it's 50 miles. We have these different ad types that are in place, but it's extremely rare that we'll actually see campaigns set up in a way that they can be successful and then become more successful. So a few things that we look at when we do an implementation, and this is by no means going to be the full list, but just kind of the main key items, is to dive deep into your CRM to understand your customer. No two markets are created the same. And I think we talked a little bit about the Bentleys in Highland Park versus Mesquite last episode. That's a great example. Where have your customers historically been selling? Obviously, if they're brand new dealership to market, it's a different scenario, and you are going to have to use the best judgment and all of that. But typically, when we work with a dealership, we're working with a store that has worked with a lot of other agencies. They're kind of sick and tired of getting a 7 out of 10, and that's not working for them. So when they come to us, they're looking for more control. We're looking for more granularity. And I have never had a circumstance where I've asked a customer, hey, have you leveraged your CRM data or first-party data to enhance the targeting of your campaigns? The answer is always no. It's just not a question that's being asked often enough. But if you have a dealership that's been around for a few years, 5 years plus even, they're going to have so many transactions by zip code that you can leverage to better target your customer. They're going to tell you, it's going to tell you who the customer profile is for that dealership. And there are very different, 4 dealers, for instance. We will have 4 dealers in West Texas, and we will book 1 in Aspen. So it's like, they're not the same person. They're not the same buyer everywhere. Yeah. So it's, you have to really be dialed into what is the information we have in our CRM that we don't look at and we don't leverage. And that is the most valuable data mine for getting kind of that demographic data. Another thing that's really important is to build with control in mind. So what a bad implementation looks like, and stick with the Ford dealership example, would be for them to have a brand campaign, which would be, Glenwood Springs Ford, have a dealer terms campaign, which would be like Ford dealership near Aspen or Ford dealership in Vail. That is actually where the vast majority of the search volume is. But then typically what you see is they have an inventory campaign where sedans, SUVs, and trucks are all jammed into one campaign. And they're just like, well, that's the inventory campaign, and you want to throw everything in there. But the problem is most dealerships don't carry those units evenly. So you need to be able to ratchet spend up and down based on what they carry, especially over the last few years with inventory being super inconsistent. And that would be the funny thing. I would go into an account, do an audit, and be like, you're spending most of your money on, Ford Edge or some lower value when you want to be spending your money on F-150s, but you actually don't have a campaign that's set up for that. So back to the way to do it is you want to make sure that you're segmenting by products, and you want to be as granular as possible. You want to avoid having a situation where you have more than a few hundred keywords in a campaign. It's very rare that you're going to have more than, say, 300 keywords in a campaign that are all really relevant to each other as a category. So what we recommend is splitting out campaigns by products and making sure that your ad groups are really tight. So a good example would be new Ford F-150, 2024 Ford F-150, 2024 Ford F-150 for sale. Those are different keywords. They all are Ford F-150 keywords, but they should all be in separate ad groups because you want to run your ad as a response to the specific question that they're asking. Most of the people will just search Ford F-150, buy Ford F-150. They'll kind of be very short tail, but you want to make sure that you have all of those ad groups split out. You want to make sure that your SUV spend is certainly not messing with your sedan spend or vice versa. So you're going to want to make sure you have that all split up. And the main reason for that is you can control audiences at the campaign level. You control your spend at the campaign level. And one of the biggest pain in the asses that I've ever had to deal with in my career running ads is when you go into a campaign that has 1,000 keywords and you have a bunch that are performing really well, but they're different product categories and they've been running for a long time because dealer.com set it up 5 years ago. And, they have a bit of account history to them. So you're like, I really don't want to mess with this campaign. It's dialed in, it's optimized. But if I want to control SUV spend, I need to move these 6 ad groups down the campaign over here. And then they're starting from scratch. So you kind of want to begin with the end in mind and just have a really robust segmentation strategy for your dealership or for any of the products that you offer.
I remember, well, now it's several years ago. Let me just give 2 points of reference because I've known you for a long, long time. And I know that going back into your first few years in digital marketing, that wasn't a topic, the single keyword ad groups, or I don't know if it's even called that now, but I do know that you built a multi-million-dollar digital marketing, mostly around paid search for a pretty big company in the auto industry that's still around today. And I remember at that time you were advocating and waving the flag for single keyword ad groups and that just account setup. It was a lot of this, but you're even sharing more detail now. So one thing I would just, for people that are tuning in and listening on this topic, Google continues to advocate ease of use in their platform. That was the original inception of Google AdWords for the small business, small, medium-sized business owner. Hey, now there's something you can do yourself. And then they realize, well, no, that's just people don't know what they're doing and they're going to waste a lot of money in the platform. So the more that Google has understood verticals, in this case, the automotive, power sports verticals, RV verticals, marine verticals, the more they also want business owners in those categories. So if you're a dealer of any of those industries that I just mentioned, Google wants you to believe that the platform now with options like Performance Max campaigns, that just jump in there even yourself. Like you can figure it out. Like it's really doable. But it's not really true. And I'm not going to say that Google's purposely trying to deceive businesses that way, but it is still really important for businesses to understand that, and you've mentioned things like this before, but the institutional knowledge, the experience of being able to say, well, I was there in the beginning of all of this, and this is how it's changed to today, is so important so that you don't waste money, so that you don't chase things that are fool's gold, like, well, I'm dependent on the co-op payback, so that's why I'm going to do this. That's like the worst decision ever, and yet it's still a thing for a lot of dealers.
Yes,
and
it's
so
like
I love hearing you go into these details. It's really important.
I'm going to light 70% of your budget on fire so you can get half of it back. That's the co-op argument,
Oh my
which
goodness.
it's interesting. And the problem, specifically with those co-op programs, it's nobody that has ever done any digital marketing at all makes the decision on who the vendor pool gets to be. That's based
Yeah.
on who bought the best steak dinner or took their clients to Sapphires in Vegas or something. But it's
Yeah.
definitely not based on a robust audit of all providers. We actually just had a situation with Genesis recently where we tried to get into their program. They've only got 3 agencies in there, and none of them are good. And we're like, hey, Lee, of doing this incredible work. We provided them with a case study, a brand new store in a very difficult market for Genesis because it's such an expensive product. They were just not interested. They're like, we're not pursuing this at that time. I'm like, your client, the dealership owner, is asking you guys for this opportunity. Let's at least have a conversation. But anyway, I could go on that. I don't want to get too off track. But yeah, it's super. The issue that I have at Google as a platform right now is that it's they don't tell you how to do things correctly. Again, let's talk about targeting. I think probably your ad targeting is the most important aspect of getting the right types of customers. You want to make sure that your spend is allocated more to the zip code than to the city, or even to the micro radii than the zip code, depending on how big the zip code is. Also, for businesses that offer finance, you actually cannot target by zip code. So we use something called micro radii. But basically, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at data for sales. We're going to look at all time. We're going to look at revenue by zip code. And that would tell us where we need to spend more of the money. So when we create those targets, we'll actually add the positive bid adjustments to them to say, hey, if I'm a Ford dealership and I'm selling to someone in Aspen, they have Rifle, which is not Aspen, and they've got Aspen, which is one of the most affluent areas in the country, in the world.
Yeah.
So am I going to spend 25% more on a click from Aspen than Rifle, Colorado? Yes, I would. So it's really, it's just having that kind of intelligence and aligning your targeting with what works. And that always kicks the crap out of the standard 25-mile radius. That's still the mantra that's kind of being preached to a lot of dealers. And I can see it based in the implementations that I've been auditing. But your targeting should not just be a big round circle. It should have a ton of little circles, and it should have a lot of red in it too, so you can correctly target and also exclude customers that are not right for your business or brand.
Yeah, it makes sense. All the sense in the world. And it makes me, think about my older days of being, most of my days back then were always centered around paid search for several years of my career. And I remember both the when there was no zip code targeting, and then all of a sudden there was, and then of course, okay, well, that's great for people that really wanted to do that. Then just radius targeting, and all of that has evolved. And what you just shared, that is extremely important for business owners to understand that. How if you have no understanding of that, how would you even know what types of conversations or questions to ask your provider to hold them accountable? Because anybody out there that can get away with, not being accountable to these things is going to do it. But the way to combat that is for business owners to really be consuming knowledge just like what you're sharing. So anyway, I don't want to stop you. You're still talking about things that are core to this kind of setup thing. I think is very critical.
Right. I would say the other one that we see wrong a lot is correct tracking and correct audience gathering. So Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager are also tools that are not super straightforward. You have to have someone that really knows how to do it. Most dealership implementations are not correct. And if they are correct at some point, dealer.com or DealerOn or some company will make an update to the platform-wide. Everyone gets a little faster to the platform or whatever. But oftentimes those Google Tag Manager codes, you get stripped out. We'll go from having conversion tracking 1 month to zeros 15 days into the next month, and we're trying to figure out what happened. But basically, correct tracking implementation means I'm tracking the different ways you can make a phone call. And tracking phone calls within digital marketing, there's actually 3 different ways that you get that one call. One is the call from the ad. That's the easiest one to track. That's super easy. Then the next one, which is a little harder to track, is an on-click, which is I'm clicking on a mobile phone number on a mobile a dealership website or business website. And then the other one is I'm dynamically I'm on my laptop like I am right now, and I see the number and it's dynamically swapped. So oftentimes they'll have one of those tracked, but not all three. So they're missing really valuable conversion data. 90% of all the leads that convert to car sales for most dealerships, most businesses are coming from the phone, not form anymore. I think people are tired of leaving their emails with businesses and getting spammed with stuff that they're not interested in anymore. So the phone is definitely the main place. Shifting over to forums, you want to make sure, and again, it's the challenge with dealership websites where they have a lot of iframes, where your iframe, like it's hard to track something that's in an iframe. Sometimes you can only track the start of the form submission. So that's what a lot of people do. And they're like, hey, congratulations, I got you 300 form fills. And the reality is you really only got 30 because, someone starting the button or fat fingering a button or something like that is not the full completion, giving that information to, someone to follow up on from a forum. The other aspect of this will be correct audience tracking, where there's kind of different types of audiences that you can track. You can target people based on user activity. So I go to the website, I spend more than the website benchmark, which is probably about 2.5 minutes. So you could have like a highly engaged audience where it's all the people that are about 2.5 minutes. That's an audience. Then you could create an audience of everyone that is converted. And that's a great audience to have. Then you have an audience of everyone that's got to all of your trust pages and then all your finance pages. It's really important that you have those things tracked, and that's what you're leveraging. But what we see most of the time, and it always really frustrates me when this happens, is they'll just do more marketing against all users. All users is like nothing. There's probably 2/3 of the business that a dealership gets is service and parts. If you set that up incorrectly, you're going to be remarketing new car ads to someone that just bought a car and maybe they're just looking for parts or whatever, and then you're wasting impressions on them. So that's an important thing to really bear in mind, is that you want to make sure that you're doing your marketing intelligently. And then, of course, there's dynamic marketing as well, where it's, I saw this vehicle, now that vehicle is following me across the web, which I think is another really great way to do that. But if you have correct audience tracking, for instance, all converters, you can layer that into your Google Ads account and say, hey, for all the people that are in this all converters audience, find me more people like that, or bid up on this type of user. So it gives you a really powerful signal that you have to set up the right way. Again, you kind of have to begin with the end in mind. And it's that one is a really important one too. The other aspect of audience tracking that we don't typically see a lot of is first-party data, or it's not updated frequently enough. I mean, if I were doing an implementation for a new account, I would probably start with, okay, we're uploading all of your new car sales data and all of your used car data, and then all your fixed ops data separate. And, you're going to have that whole list in there. So if you want to target everyone, that's fine, but you can find similar users. You can target those people explicitly. Like a great example would be with one customer, we're actually targeting for buyback. We're targeting sold units, people that bought units from these dealerships 5 years ago. So we're saying, okay, we don't want to target anyone now with this ad. We want to target people that we have sold and serviced these bikes. We know they're great. We want to target those people, and we're looking for vehicles above a certain threshold. So you can upload all of that information into Google Ads. It takes a lot of work. The data security part is really important. You kind of have to have a client that's willing to work with you through that, but that can be a massive game changer. And that's like, that'll be a situation where you'll get like a 20% performance boost out of that one change alone. It's a very powerful.
Yeah, I think you just went through 5 or 6 really, really critical points on, you just actually said it, thinking about, the end, in the beginning, think about the end before you get started, which I think is really critical. You shared some things that made me think of a scenario that I see all too often in both B2B and B2C scenarios, but it's if you're trying to get fancy with forms that are not native to your website platform, and you're spending heavily on paid search. In fact, and I can think of an example. I'm just not going to say it so it's captured on here, but somebody that spends a lot of money, so much that paid search is their number one source of traffic.
Yeah.
And what the reporting shows to this company is that they're getting hundreds of conversions. And you just explained, and I think it's really important to reemphasize the point that if that's the case in your business, where it looks like, wow, we get a lot of traffic, and it may not be most of your traffic, but even if it's 30 or 40% of your traffic, you're driving through paid search, and it's showing you hundreds of, key moments or whatever, key events or whatever GA4's called them now. You're equivalent of, what we all would think is a conversion, and you're like, no way. It's because it's just tracking the beginning, or they opened that particular form. And the reality is that you may actually be getting zero conversions.
That's right.
Very, very important. It's great. This is really good stuff. I hope the audience is enjoying it as much as I am. I'm learning. If I'm learning stuff, Mike Shaug, then I can guarantee you, sure as shit, car dealers and power sports dealers and RV dealers and marine dealers, there's going to be so much stuff here they could literally load up an arsenal and give their crappy vendors a really bad day. Absolutely. I want to switch, if you're okay. I want to move in and ask you, pick your brain a little bit on keyword research and selecting keywords. Some people think that keyword research is an age-old topic, but there is so much depth and importance to understanding this depending on what kind of company you are. And so could you share a little bit on some of the factors that should be considered when you're trying to do keyword research and selecting what you're going to actually, because your money's going to go towards Absolutely. This stuff. Can you share a little bit about that?
Again, beginning with the end in mind, you want to funnel as much of your spend to the geo that you are physically located in. If I'm a dealership in Austin, Texas, I should not be spending more money in Georgia than I am in Austin, Texas. So keywords that are concatenated with Austin, Polaris dealership Austin, Harley Davidson dealership Austin, Ford dealership Austin. Those are you're gonna want to make sure that you have a really good, robust list of that. And then you go into the micro markets, Westlake, Lakeway, the more affluent areas, or the areas that your business, where your customers are, and that CRM data will put you in the right direction there. But yeah, in terms of keyword research, I mean, you want to have a good mix of like short tail keywords, Ford F-150, Lightning, but then you're going to also want to have some of the longer tail and geo indicated versions as well. The search volume will mostly accrue at the short tail, but there is still a tremendous amount of people that will say a couple more words that will indicate that they don't just know that they want a Ford F-150, they know where they want to go. And that's just a really great signal that they're in market for you and that business is winnable. Finance is one that I really don't see very often in keyword research. You definitely want to be going after finance. It's funny, there are some brands that are mostly finance driven. Like for instance, there are not a ton of people looking to go buy a Mitsubishi, for instance. But Mitsubishi has incredible finance offers right now. So that's how they're getting a lot of units sold. And you wouldn't think of yourself as that person, but a lot of people are primarily financial shoppers, especially in the lower, kind of quartile of the market. So that's a really important one. In terms of like tools, there's so many different ones, SEMrush. I think the most important thing is to build a really strong list of inventory related keywords, segment them by trim level, and then look at your alpha products. You might have a Ford dealership that sells 10 Edges a year and 100 F-150s or way more than that. Then the F-150 needs to have its own keywords. It needs to be its own campaign because that is a top moving product and you want to make sure that you can control the targeting and everything at that level. But yeah, looking at the products, looking at your primary target areas, and then looking at the sub-markets, those are all things that you're going to want to make sure that you have in there. A lot of what we hear is that the broad badge kind of covers everything. And it does, like if we just ran Ford F-150, we would get Rifle, we would get Ford F-150 Aspen, Vale, we would get all of that. but we wouldn't be able to say, hey, I want more of this. So that's why you want to differentiate and have these different types of keywords. And then also, going back to that Ford dealer example, you can say, hey, we're for this Ford dealership in Glenwood Springs. We tell them, hey, we're answering your question. You want to be, sold to an Aspen. Here we are. We work with people in Aspen all the time. So you can really kind of hyper target your messaging based on the keywords that your users are driving. One other thing, though, to note, I don't know how much you've looked at Google I/O, or kind of the big unveil they did of search, basically searches that are enhanced with AI. I actually foresee long tail keywords getting a second wind now, because as people become used to searching with AI search, they can start their query in kind of a dumb way and be like, hey, like what's the Ford, the new Ford truck model? Okay, we're getting information of what that is. Where can I go get it? And you'll see this kind of multi-search touch point to kind of get to that refined query. So you're going to see the long tail keywords, I think, being a lot more utilized, because Google makes more money when people do more searches. They have a revenue per search model. So if they can take the buyer journey from, hey, I'm looking for an Ford F-150 near me, I'm going to search the 10 blue links, click on a few different ads, or, but like basically when that person does a search, another ad is triggered. It's another opportunity for them to serve ads. So that is how they make their money. So I really feel that AI is going to kind of extend the search for any products kind of strategically, because that's how you can better monetize Google search.
I can see that. Couple of points you made in there. I love you using the Mitsubishi example. I think that's really a perfect example to help people learn from. And I think it's also interesting that Mitsubishi, although they haven't been able to quite capitalize on it the way that a couple of other brands did, but very similarly to Mitsubishi, Hyundai and Kia used to be the example of a disposable lighter as well. Like, I don't really want a car like that. one of these
They
cars.
had to slap a 5-year, 100,000 mile, no questions asked warranty on it.
Yeah. But it's interesting because it bought them the time, and clearly they made all kinds of business decisions other than just having the time to do it, but they did buy themselves enough time to create a place in the marketplace to be a economical, right? It was
Right.
You can save money and still have four wheels and a steering wheel. And look at those two brands now. I mean, they've done amazing things. I can't say that Mitsubishi's going to do that, but
You never know. I mean, but price and financing is their hook. For Mitsubishi, or sorry, for Kia and Hyundai, it was the warranty, and that caused people to consider that over Toyota and over Honda to a pretty substantial amount. So there's always a hook for your brand, and you just need to kind of lean into it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely true. Again, just kind of moving through some of this, although it's great. I mean, we could stay on any one of these categories for a long period of time, but I want to get into a little bit to kind of ad copy and creative. Some of the best practices, I suppose, are tactics for writing good ad copy.
Right.
People are always, I think, wanting the easy way out for some reason on ad copy. And I think it's far more important than just, the path of least resistance. But what are your thoughts on ad copy? How important is it?
Super important. I mean, that's another kind of thing that I wish Google gave a little bit more clarity on. So right now we're using RSAs. We're migrating on from extended text ads. I don't even think you can add them anymore. It's all just RSAs, which have, a ton of headlines and description lines. You let Google's AI engine figure that out. But what I see sometimes is an RSA that has multiple lines that say the same thing, because they really want that to be in the ad and they didn't pin that particular headline. So you'll see the ad served with come get your financing, apply for your finance now, talk to our finance consultants, all within the same ad. It's just like, okay, like clearly whoever set this up thought that Google would serve one, not all three of those variations. So that's a really important factor. I mean, the most important thing is you want to get like some of the dealer speak in there. Like every dealership has a different way of speaking to their audience. For instance, Tri-State Ford of Amarillo's number one competitor for the last, I think, 50 years has been Gene Messer Ford in Amarillo. And their slogan is we don't mess around. So it's like they're playing on their name. So that's something that they wanted in there. A lot of dealerships have something unique. So find those things, put that in the ad because that'll make your clients happy. And it's effective. You want to reinforce whatever the brand messaging is that they typically have. But outside of that, you want to make sure that your CTAs and value propositions are really on point. You know, for instance, if we're talking about a truck, you want to talk about the engine in one of the ad lines. You want to be talking about, you know, how many miles you can go on one charge. If it's an EV, you want to like really talk about like the NPG on, you know, like all of those things. That is a line for each one. If you're looking for something a little bit more general, like Ford dealership near me, then you talk about what you have to sell. But you want to avoid repetitive copy, and you always want to have two ads running because you can leapfrog forward that way. Typically, the way that works for us when we're optimizing ad copy, again, you're looking at this all based on the account being built the right way, and it's not 500 keywords with one ad that kind of speaks to everything. This is ad copy that speaks directly to people that are looking for Honda CR-Vs. You know, so you can put all of that stuff in there. The, you know, your dealership promise, your, you know, the MPG of CRV capacity and luggage capacity, like all that kind of stuff. But then you want to have another ad that's kind of similar and you play them against each other. And when you have the decided winner, which I think takes about 1,000 impressions to figure out, you know, that can take 2 weeks, that can take 1 day. It really depends on the market and how much traffic you're getting through your accounts. But yeah, well, what we do is we actually leapfrog. We kind of have a leapfrog optimization model where we'll take the better performing ad and make a copy of that's similar, but a little bit better from the viewpoint of our ad manager. And that's how we incrementally get the ads moving in the right direction. The quality score is not as big of a deal as it used to be. It used to be this incredible thing that if you wrote an ad with a bunch of basically keyword stuff to crap out of your ads, you paid a lower CPC, and you did. And that worked for a really, really long time. And it works less well now. So you don't necessarily want to do that, but you want to make sure that the keyword of the product is there in the ad at least a couple of times. It's got to be in the headlines. It's got to be in a couple of the description lines. So people know that this ad is not, you know, a general Honda dealer ad. It's a CRV ad. So those are some of the best practices for A/B testing. Obviously, outside of just running the split test within ad groups, you can also create experiments where you will try a bunch of other different things. That you could try different audience segments. You can try, hey, we're doing these ads against different A types and stuff, and see which one wins. But the thing that's a key to success in A/B testing is that you want to make sure that you're clear on like what's the time frame or the data time frame that you want to be assessing ad performance in. If you have an ad that's only gotten 200 impressions, then you probably don't have enough data to make the optimization. So, and then you'll over optimize your accounts. The quality score keeps resetting. So you have to be cautious and kind of methodical with how you do that.
Yeah. Again, really good tips. Makes me think of things from the past. I'm like, you know, just quality score, just kind of gave me a little bit of anxiety there for a second. Just all of these different things that you end up as a business chasing. But in the case of car dealers, power sports dealers, and a lot of businesses, for me, it's the reason why I have to emphasize the importance of who you're choosing to do this on your behalf. I'm a big, always have been, but very, very big fan of businesses being smart enough to know how to choose someone that can do things that they would never be able to do on their own, on their behalf, almost treating as if like these businesses are our businesses. We're trying to chase the type of success that we'd want if we owned your business. That's how good
Yeah.
we are at what we're doing. And when I listen to you share these things in such great detail, it just makes me think of how important that is. And I think it's extremely valuable for people tuning in. So I know you talked a little bit already on targeting audience segmentation. I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that before I pick your brain a little bit on tracking.
Yeah. I think in terms of like audience segmentation, it really obviously totally depends on who on that CRM data and who those people are and what type of different buyer you have. If you're a
Mm-hmm.
motorcycle dealer, let's say you sell Polaris bikes, Indian, Triumph, Can-Am, all under one roof, you have many different types of buyers, and you need
Yeah.
to segment your products accordingly. But even within like smaller lineup brands like Ford, there is a huge discrepancy in the type of buyer between someone that's looking for a $25,000 sedan and someone that's looking for an $85,000 lifted Bronco. Those are
Mm.
different human beings shopping for the same brand. They have different income levels. So again, I think the benefit of having a segmented structure where you have sedans over here and you have your SUVs over here, or higher ticket items, that way you can do things like bid up or down based on the income level. And sometimes, like, I mean, I don't think you ever really need to exclude the top 10% of income earners. Because, if someone is looking for, a Camry, that's fine. If they're a multimillionaire or whatever, like, but what you do really need to focus on if you're looking at luxury products, um, you want to exclude the bottom 50% of income earners as much as you can, just because there's so much meat on the bone with that top 50%. That's who you sell all your cars to, and you will incidentally get a lot of that traffic anyway. And you will anyway, because people is removing our levers of control. You used to be able to be incredibly precise to the street. I remember with the Huffines group in Plano, we would draw lines like on streets where we would target here and wouldn't overlap in some other viewership. That level of control is not, it's not really happening. So you have to know that even if you do everything perfectly, you're going to get some mock traffic. You're going to get some people who Google didn't know what income level they were in. They were in others, so they saw your ad and they wasted your money, or maybe not. But that's a really important factor, is segmenting your audience based on the income level for the product that you're selling. Yeah, I think that's the main thing.
I love those examples, and I think it's really important for the audience, whether you're selling cars and trucks and SUVs or you're selling motorcycles. I think this also applies in the RV industry. I'm an RV owner as of last year, not quite a full year of owning a travel trailer, which I love. It's so fun. Not a have to have, just kind of can you have. And I'm old now, Mike, so don't make fun of me. But even knowing the differences between, Jayco versus Winnebago versus, Keystone,
King of the
there's so
road.
many brands and differences. But not getting too far into RV, I think for the audience, it's really important whether, I guess I would focus mostly on automotive and power sports dealers, but in power sports, my goodness, it's rare that you're just Harley Davidson or you're a powerhouse Honda store and so you're only Honda product. It's much more common that you're like the Ride Now stores where you have multiple brands under just about every single one of your rooftops. And my goodness, not only is that an opportunity for segmentation and proper targeting, it's almost should be a mandate. Like,
Yeah.
you don't even want to start to spend money if you have 10 brands, from Ducati to Suzuki.
Yeah.
Those are two very different buyers. The guy who's got the money for a really hot Italian product
Yeah.
like Ducati versus, hey, it might be my first bike and I'm getting a Suzuki or a Kawasaki. That's important. So I love that you share on that because I think it's really important.
I think the biggest thing is when
Yeah.
you like audience segments apply for like motorcycle enthusiasts, which I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to assume of all the motorcycles that have been sold in the United States, most of them are probably under 9 grand. That's probably the minority of bikes that are in that like 30 to 50K territory, which if you're an Indian dealer, that's all you sell. Their base level Indian Chief, I think is like $15,000 or something like that. When I bought my rider, it was $12,000. The same bike now is 20. So if you are applying kind of general settings and you're kind of you're moneying your targeting for people that are looking for a CBO with people that are within a Kawasaki audience, those people are not going to convert. You're not going to move that person over. So
Yep.
that's a very important factor as well.
Yeah, totally agree. It's one of those points that just kind of needs to be stressed over and over and over for those power sports dealers, because they don't all understand that, or maybe they understand it, but the depth is really important. Tracking, measuring performance, of course, is really, really important. Do you have recommendations, or some things that you might say in terms of tools or metrics that businesses should be looking at, tracking and measuring for performance? I love that you share the kinds of things. That's why I'm asking a question like this, because you are equipping the business owners to have really insightful conversations, right? And there's just not enough of that in all serving all these industries. So what are your thoughts on maybe helping businesses around how they would track or metrics to measure?
Right. I mean, obviously, Google Analytics is free. It's what most people should use. You have your CRM that's hopefully set up correctly. And then you have Google Ads. You have kind of two systems that work and are both tracking typically within GTM, but they'll say different things. So you at least within the standard Google Ads implementation, you get Google Ads tracking, you get Google Analytics, and you can kind of cross-reference each other. However, not a huge fan of Analytics G4 for a number of reasons. The main one being there are no more views. You don't have the ability to create a Google Analytics account anymore and say, hey, this is the raw data view, this is the POM view, this is the filter view where we filter out all the traffic for our IP, which makes a lot of sense, especially in dealerships where your team is on the website all the time, visiting your website hundreds of times a day. That absolutely will inflate your metrics. And again, if you're doing all users or marketing, guess who you're marketing to? Your own staff. So yeah, that is definitely really important. We're starting to actually explore with other analytics systems as well. There's a couple of ones out there. Plausible is one that we're going to be piloting. Heap Analytics is another one. And these are already kind of cookieless, because what we're facing right now is the deprecation of cookies. Luckily, thank God, it was postponed for another year because Google they have not figured this out. And they keep warning us as agency and saying, hey, if you don't have your first party matched in here and all the stuff, you're going to lose this ability to track. And it's just like, you mean you're taking away our ability to track users? Like, you're giving us less visibility into what moves the needle. That absolutely benefits Google. Like, it just... there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of changes they could make to make your marketing more precise, but the less precise they make your marketing, the more you have to spend. So, that is absolutely a fact. And there are absolutely cases. I was reading a Search Engine Journal article on basically the case that Google has versus a bunch of plaintiffs in different states. And they're talking about how Google absolutely wins the auctions. Removal of search terms under 10 impressions every month. Like, there's just a lot of things that doesn't benefit dealers. When they made their search terms change a couple of years ago, where basically the data threshold that you had to be at in order for Google to say, hey, your Ford F-150 matched to the search term of new Ford F-150. If you get less than 10 impressions, it won't show it. It'll just say it was that keyword. It will not show you those search terms. And for us, when we're doing our keywords plus minus sprint, which is when we remove where we add negative keywords for stuff that doesn't make sense. For instance, for F-150 lift kit or something like that, if you get one or two impressions or clicks on that a month, you're not going to actually know where you're wasting your money. So that's definitely a very important thing to know.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, it's been amusing to watch Google. I wasn't surprised at all that they punted that implementation for another year, because I haven't seen them say anything that would indicate that they figured out how to not actually shoot themselves in the foot in terms of it's going to cost them money. Like, it's going to eat into revenue when you take away some of those tracking capabilities like that. So
they had
it's
FLOC, they had Turtle Dove, they've had all these different things, which I just don't think work. And then some of them aren't GDPR compliant, so they're really looking for a solution that'll work in the States and be compliant with like California law and then also international law. So that's tough for them. But it would be really cool if you could have a setting, like say I'm in Texas, we're a cookie-free state, and then you have all of the options to target people the way you have been, and then other different options. But the tool's not quite as there. It's not there yet.
Yeah. They'll figure something out. It's always fun to kind of watch all the different goings on within this digital era. You just a few minutes back, you were talking about, AI and search. And I think that's an area where Google will probably stay really dominant, only because I don't know if you noticed this, and this is a bit of a tangent, but for people that are interested, Rand Fishkin of Moz fame and now SparkToro, he posted just, I don't think it was last week. It's in the last few days, but he, Sam Altman or somebody, it wasn't Sam, but somebody was just saying all these glowing things about how, you're going to be able to go to Chat GPT and, it's going to do better on search. And they literally said, go do these types of searches. One of which was like, find me some great places for lunch in town. And so Rand did it in Chat GPT. I think, what are we at, 4.5? And he's like, recommend some great places for lunch in Seattle. And half of them were closed or not open. And he wrote back, I love how Rand just kind of won. I think he learned so much from the Moz experience that he's a really pretty transparent guy. But he was like, this is garbage. Like, this is awful. All these businesses are terrible. And he then posted his sequence with Chat GPT of basically telling it these businesses are closed, and like, oh, I'm sorry, let me get you a few more, and then it would the same thing. So we'll see. Hopefully Google leads on that. That should be a place relative to AI that they would be the leader anyway.
I think something it wasn't on the agenda today, but AI in search is absolutely gonna gobble up a couple of verticals. I don't think it's gonna hit auto car sales that heavily, but I think it will massively impact fixed ops. When you think about what Google has done historically with verticalized search and partners, back in the day, if you were a travel agent for an airline, you would list with Expedia or whatever. Then Google came out with Google Flights. What do you think happened to all the traffic that used to go to TripAdvisor, that used to go to hotels.com? All of those companies became substantially less valuable. I worked with someone that actually witnessed this firsthand when they were working on Hard Rock Casino advertising, and then you could book your stay natively in Google and your flight like pretty much natively. That traffic you didn't go to the website. You lost that opportunity to remarket. So I don't think that that's going to be necessarily a threat for like local searches or for like, say, unit or inventory searches for cars. For any search that's like, hey, what's the best way to change an oil filter? You're absolutely not going to be going to those content. You're not going to be going to the places where the content is coming from. Let's put it that way. You're going to be getting a distilled version of that keeps you searching and interacting, because that is, again, what's going to be triggering the impressions, which, I mean, it's good job security. Ads are not going anywhere. I was kind of worried the other day when I thought that, GPT-5 or whatever was going to have a search engine in it, but it's a really complicated problem, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we're all finding this out at the same time, but there is so much nuance, and especially when you start to get into the niches, and then the niches within the niches. I say this all the time. I feel like a broken record on so many things, as I just say them all the time, almost every day. But the automotive industry, the power sports industry, those are two niches alone. Okay, well, you get into the automotive industry, and then what's your niche? What are you, a CRM provider? Okay, well, that's your niche. Are you a DMS provider? Are you a digital marketing provider? Are you a digital marketing provider that doesn't do SEO? Are you only SEO? I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on. And it's so important to know all of those things before you even start thinking about how many salespeople you need or what your marketing strategy is, and what channels you're gonna spend money in, what ones you're gonna try to optimize organically. And there's just so much to be thought of. And when I think about AI, I think, well, the nuance within all of those niches, there's still a extremely important part of the human relationship with AI that's still going to be the champion. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't see some
Yeah.
things develop. We're like, oh, it'll blow me away. But I'm seeing so many things around graphic creation and video creation, and the things you can do with Mid-Journey are
Yeah.
still blowing my mind. It seems like every couple of weeks I'm like, it does what now? But on this topic of, is it going to be able to do better on ad creation? Everything you've talked about on this episode, Mike, I'm not worried. And I'm playing around with AI stuff and reading and consuming every single day. I'm not worried about any of it being able to do the things that you've talked about just on this episode anytime soon.
Good.
I would, as a business owner, I wouldn't turn it over to, oh yeah, let's let AI do it. When I have somebody like you and your business that knows things that AI's doesn't understand the nuance of. So, but let me get back on track. Just a couple more minutes before I'm gonna unfortunately have to land the plane. But I wanna get your thoughts on a couple more things before we close. One on optimization and ad fatigue are a lot. And if I'll give you an either or, if you'd rather, I would love to know your thoughts on when people just get kind of tired. I say this a lot. You can fatigue your audience with your ad copy, with email campaigns, all those types of things. So
Yeah.
we have enough time for you to choose one or the other. If you want to talk on optimization or kind of ad fatigue, or if you feel like you could hit both, I'd love your thoughts.
Fatigue is you should be modifying your ads frequently. So with new copy, it should reflect what's on your website. And where you're going to get more ad fatigue is in display. It's in social ads, with marketing ads, and you should be changing those out at least on a quarterly basis, ideally on a monthly basis. You should be getting fresh creative and hitting people with different formats. That's how you handle the ad fatigue. I don't really think of ad fatigue too much associated with search ads. Search ads do work at best, but I don't know if people remember necessarily what was in line 4 or whatever. So I think ad fatigue is more kind of the visual. Obviously, it applies to TV or any kind of video advertising. You absolutely want to change things up fairly frequently. In terms of just real quick on optimizing ad campaigns, in our workflow, we have about 22 different things we do, but kind of the categories that your agency needs to be looking at or you need to be looking at in-house is, time of day bid adjustments. What does our ad schedule look like? When are we serving our ads? Are we spending our money where we typically have higher density of conversions? How does that look? You want to be looking at that once a month at least. You also want to be applying a monthly kind of audit spread to your audience's income levels and making whatever changes you can to get more of what's working. You definitely want to look at targeting and say, hey, over the last 30 to 90 days, this particular zip code has been our absolute winner from a conversion standpoint, or these fine zip codes. Is that still the case? Was that the case last month or month to date? You want to make sure that you're really looking at those things, because sometimes there can be a change and, a new dealership will open, and then all of a sudden there's just a ton of intent that kind of disappears from an area that might have been kind of a neighboring zip code or market for both of you. So geos is something you need to be looking at all the time. You need to be excluding keywords that don't make sense for your business all the time. And when you do exclude them, you should probably add them to an exclusion template, because sometimes you'll find the truth spread out in 100 different places. So for us, we have more than 100 dealerships that we work with. And if we look singularly at one store, we might not get enough data on keyword waste, but we'll get a little piece from one dealer, then we'll get something from another, and kind of in aggregate, we'll make our negative keyword lists smarter, more robust, because with the understanding that our visibility has dropped by at least half. So that's those I think are the main elements. not over optimizing to brand or spending too much on brand. You might have to spend like 10%, and then that means you're spending the rest of your budget between dealer terms and inventory. You need to, on a monthly basis, be looking at your incentives, making sure that that's in your ad copy, any kind of finance specials. Those are super compelling always. They are now. They're always the number one most valuable feature you can include in your creative. But those would kind of high level to be the main things that we would look at in optimization.
Once again, awesome stuff. For the audience listening and or watching, you could have a one-on-one conversation with Mike, and those are totally free. I can't imagine how much longer they will be. Just kidding. Mike's very gracious with his time, and you literally can have a one-on-one conversation. If you want to get in contact with him, go to premieronlinemarketing.com. But we've been cleared to land the plane. So, hey, look at that. Another great place to park. Another great episode. We appreciate the comments and questions from the audience. So please feel free to share. Your feedback helps us deliver episodes like this that are relevant. This also includes your comments might be a question or something that you want us to dig in on future upcoming episodes. So feel free to jump into the comments, especially if you see this content on places like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and definitely YouTube. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon right here on the Palmcast.